The sound of platinum snapping is quieter than you would think, but on that Sunday morning in Oregon, it sounded like a gunshot. My 16-year-old niece, Ava, didn't even look at me. She was live streaming to her followers. She had snatched the vintage bracelet right off my wrist, holding it up to the camera and calling it tarnished junk. When it didn't fit over her hand, she didn't unclasp it, she yanked. The delicate safety chain forged decades ago sheared clean through, and 80 years of history clattered onto the stone patio behind my brother's house outside Portland. My brother Mark sipped his mimosa. My sister-in-law, Brooke, didn't even glance up from adjusting her ring light. Ava giggled. Oops, garbage anyway. Nobody moved. Nobody apologized. They thought it was just jewelry. They didn't know it was the only reason they still had a roof over their heads. Before we see exactly how much that joke cost her, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from right now. I want to see who's part of our community today. I picked up the broken pieces from the cold stone. The platinum felt heavy in my palm, a dead weight where a pulse used to be. Above me, brunch continued. Brooke complained that the shadows were ruining her aesthetic. Mark topped off glasses, laughing at a joke he'd heard 1,000 times, playing the role of the successful provider in a house he couldn't actually afford. The house was a stage set. The manicured lawn, the imported countertops, the lease on the luxury SUV in the driveway. It was all a performance of perfection funded by maxed-out credit cards and quiet bailouts they never acknowledged. And I was the backstage crew. I was Claire, the archivist, the historian who spent her days in dust and silence. To them, I was boring, the unmarried sister-in-law with sensible shoes and a 7-year-old sedan. I was tolerated because I was useful. I stood up, sliding the broken metal into my pocket. I didn't scream, I didn't flip the table. A younger version of me would have cried, begging them to understand the sentimental value of what Ava had just destroyed. But the woman standing on that patio felt something else entirely: cold, clinical clarity. For years, I had asked myself why I stayed. Why did I pay their property taxes when they were days from foreclosure? Why did I cover emergency vacations? Why did I quietly wire $60,000 a year to a private music academy in California so Ava could study violin, all while they mocked my frugality? I used to call it kindness. I told myself I was the glue holding the family together, but as I watched Brooke editing footage of my humiliation for her story, I realized the truth. It wasn't kindness, it was the invisible chain of the survivor. When you grow up as the one who fixes things, you start believing your only value is your utility. You believe love is a transaction. If you pay the bill, they'll love you. If you solve the crisis, they'll respect you. You wear the chain willingly because you're terrified that without it, you're nothing. It's a prison you build for yourself, brick by brick, check by check. I'd spent 31 years believing that if I endured enough disrespect, I'd earn a seat at the table. I thought my silence was dignified. I thought my invisible support was noble. But looking at Ava, already bored and scrolling through her phone, I realized I hadn't been noble. I'd been an enabler. I had taught them that I was a natural resource to be mined, not a person to be respected. They didn't see a sister or an aunt, they saw an appliance. And when an appliance breaks, you don't apologize to it, you kick it. Brooke finally glanced at me and waved a dismissive hand. Don't look so tragic, Claire. It looked old anyway. You can probably get a few bucks for the scrap metal. I looked at her. I looked at the house my money had saved. I looked at the child my money was educating. The chain around my neck didn't snap. It dissolved. I'm leaving, I said, my voice barely a whisper over the music. Mark didn't turn around. Okay, see you next week. Don't forget Mom's birthday gift. I walked through the sliding doors, past the kitchen island where unpaid bills were usually hidden, and out the front door. I got into my car. I didn't slam it. I closed it gently. The silence inside was heavy, but it wasn't empty. It was the sound of a contract expiring. The drive home blurred into asphalt and adrenaline. I didn't speed. I drove with the terrifying precision of someone who has just realized she's holding the detonator. When I walked into my apartment, the air was cool and still, smelling of old books and lemon polish. I set my keys down, made a cup of Earl Grey, and watched the steam rise. My hands were steady. I carried the mug to the small desk in the corner and opened my laptop. The glow illuminated stacks of archival boxes along the walls. This was my life. Quiet, orderly, and secretly very expensive. I logged into my banking portal and opened a new spreadsheet. I titled it The Ledger of Ghosts. For the first time in years, I typed the numbers I'd kept hidden in my head. The mortgage payments on Mark's first house when he lost his job, $42,000. The loan for Brooke's boutique that went bankrupt in 6 months, $25,000. The down payment for their current showcase home, labeled a gift so they could qualify, $80,000. I stared at the totals. They were staggering. They walked like royalty, posting luxury while judging my sensible clothes and old car. Their kingdom was built on my money. They believed spending made them powerful. But real power isn't what you spend, it's what you control. I logged into the donor portal for the Music Academy. My username was anonymous, just numbers known to the board. I navigated to active scholarships. There it was, the Ava M. Artistic Merit Grant, $60,000 a year, fully funded by an anonymous benefactor. I'd set it up 3 years ago when she first showed promise. I wanted her to have opportunities I never had. I wanted to believe that if I gave enough, they would see me. They never saw the donor. They saw a free ride. They assumed the money came from the school, from the universe, from their own specialness. They never asked how an average student secured one of the most competitive grants in the country. I looked at the broken bracelet beside my laptop. The jeweler once told me it was worth $21,000. But its value wasn't the metal, it was the history. It was the dignity that survived decades only to be snapped by a teenager who measured worth in likes. Ava's tuition for 3 years was $180,000. The bracelet was worth $21,000. The math was simple. They destroyed something precious to me because they thought I was cheap. They thought I couldn't afford nice things. They didn't realize I couldn't afford nice things because I was buying their entire lives. I moved my cursor to the Manage Funding tab. My finger hovered over the trackpad. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel sad. I felt the cold, clean weight of a balance sheet finally zeroing out. I clicked Cancel Recurring Transfer. A confirmation window appeared. Are you sure you want to revoke this grant? This action is immediate and may affect the student's enrollment status. I clicked Yes. The screen refreshed. Status, inactive. Funding, withdrawn. I leaned back and took a sip of tea. It was still hot. The silence in my apartment wasn't lonely anymore. It was expensive. It was the sound of $180,000 staying exactly where it belonged. The glitch in the matrix happened at 9 a.m. Monday morning. My phone rang. Brooke. I stared at her name until the last second before voicemail, then answered. Hello, Brooke. She didn't greet me. Claire, thank God, we have a crisis. The academy just called Mark. They're saying the tuition payment for this semester bounced. I watched a speck of dust drift through a beam of light. Bounced? That's impossible, she snapped. They said the funding source was withdrawn. Withdrawn. Can you believe the incompetence? Ava is in the middle of rehearsals. If this isn't fixed today, they're pulling her from the program. I took another slow sip. That sounds stressful. Stressful? It's catastrophic, she was shouting now. Look, Mark is useless with paperwork, and I'm swamped with a brand deal. Since you work in archives and know how forms work, can you call them and use your professional voice? Tell them it's obviously a clerical error and reinstate it. I almost laughed. Even now, she assumed I would fix it. She never once considered the money was truly gone. To her, money just existed, like air. I can't call them, Brooke. I'm not her guardian. Just pretend, she snapped. Say you're her manager. Just fix it. I'm sure the donor has their reasons, I said calmly. Reasons? What reasons? Ava is a prodigy. This is some jealous bureaucrat trying to sabotage her future. Probably someone who saw her live stream yesterday and got bitter. The irony was thick. She was right. It was about the live stream. Not envy. Exposure. Ava exposed their cruelty to the one person who mattered. I can't help you, Brooke. You'll have to handle it yourselves. I hung up before she could scream. I turned my phone to silent. The quiet that followed was heavy with inevitability. They were about to hit reality without a pillow between them and the wall. Denial lasted exactly 48 hours.
By Wednesday, it curdled into victimhood. Brooke posted a black and white Instagram story, mascara running just enough to look tragic. Guys, I'm literally shaking. Some jealous family members are trying to sabotage Ava's future. They hacked the scholarship portal. It's heartbreaking that people can't stand to see a young girl shine. I watched it from my desk at the Historical Museum, equal parts amused and disgusted. She wasn't asking for help. She was weaponizing sympathy. Then my phone buzzed. Ava. Aunt Claire, Mom says you won't fix the glitch. Seriously, I need a new bow for the showcase. And since you're being weird, you owe me. I looked it up and Cartier has a love bracelet that would make us even. We're even? She broke an heirloom, lost a scholarship, and thought I owed her? I didn't reply. I opened a new document on my work computer. I addressed it formally to the Board of Directors of the Pacific Coast Conservatory. I wasn't just an anonymous donor. In my professional capacity, I had spent 5 years archiving the original compositions of the conservatory's founder. I'd restored brittle manuscripts, uncovered lost symphonies, curated the exhibit that brought them international recognition. I was a silent steward of their legacy. I wrote precisely. I cited the terms of the Ava M. Artistic Merit Grant. I referenced the Donor Conduct Clause, specifically the section on integrity and respect for historical preservation. I attached a photo of the broken bracelet beside the founder's original handwritten letter gifting it to my grandmother. This student, I wrote, demonstrated a flagrant disregard for the history this institution exists to protect. By destroying a piece of the founder's personal legacy for social media clout, she violated the spirit of this grant. I am permanently revoking funding. This decision is final. I hit send. 10 minutes later, a reply arrived from the board chair. Dear Miss Vance, we are horrified. We had no knowledge of this connection. The revocation has been processed. We will also be reviewing her enrollment pending a conduct hearing. Thank you for your dedication to our history. I closed the laptop. I wasn't the aunt anymore. I wasn't the doormat. I was the archivist. I curated their rise. Now I curated their fall. The silence on my phone wasn't waiting. It was loading. That afternoon, I visited a jeweler tucked into the historic district, hidden behind a heavy door and an intercom. The air smelled of polish and patience. Mr. Calder, a man who had spent 6 decades studying gemstones, adjusted his loop as I laid the broken bracelet on black velvet. Platinum, he murmured, mid-century, exceptional craftsmanship. You don't see latches like this anymore. He lifted the snapped safety chain with tweezers. This isn't wear and tear, he said quietly. This was violence. I know. He turned the main band under the light, the piece Ava called junk, and then he froze. He squinted, then drew in a sharp breath, so loud in the quiet room that I flinched. Miss Vance, he said, his voice dropping, do you know the provenance of this piece? It was my grandmother's, I said. She left it to me. She said it was special, but never said why. Mr. Calder motioned me closer. I leaned into the magnifier.
Inside the band, etched so finely it looked like a scratch, were the words, "For Eleanor, for the music that saved me. W.H. 1947. My blood went cold. Walter Hensley, founder of the Pacific Coast Conservatory, the man whose statue stood in the courtyard Ava dreamed of performing in, the man whose original scores I had spent 5 years restoring in climate-controlled silence. Your grandmother, he said softly, was Eleanor Vance. She wasn't just a patron, she was his first archivist. After the war, she helped smuggle his compositions into the United States. He commissioned this for her. This isn't jewelry, Claire. It's a relic. It belongs in a museum. I stared at the broken platinum. The irony was suffocating. Ava hadn't just broken a bracelet, she had desecrated a piece of history tied directly to the institution she was begging to stay in. She claimed to live for music, yet she had snapped the legacy of the man who built her world, all because it wasn't shiny enough for social media. Can you fix it? I asked. I can, he said. I can fuse the metal, but the scar will remain. Metal has memory. Good, I said. Leave the scar. I stepped back into the afternoon sun, feeling heavier and sharper all at once. Before, canceling the funding felt like justice. Now it felt like duty. Ava didn't just lack gratitude, she lacked reverence. She was a vandal in the temple of music.
My phone showed 12 missed calls from Mark and a text from Brooke. "We need to talk now." I didn't reply. I had the truth in my pocket, and it weighed more than platinum. The twist was never that I had the money. The twist was that I held the history, and history has a way of burying those who don't respect it. The phone buzzed again. "We're coming over." I smiled. Let them. The ambush came at 6 that evening. I was reading in my living room, enjoying the quiet hum of my paid-off apartment, when pounding shook the door. Through the peephole, I saw them all. Mark pacing, Brooke's makeup smeared, Ava sulking, arms crossed. I opened the door and didn't step aside. "Can I help you?" Mark pushed past me. "Are you out of your mind? We got a letter. 48 hours to pay $60,000 or Ava is expelled." Brooke followed, shaking. "They said the donor withdrew funding for ethical violations." Ethical violations. "We need that money, Claire. You have to loan it to us." Ava dropped onto my sofa without asking, kicking off her shoes. "This is so unfair. I didn't even do anything." I watched them carefully. They still thought this was a negotiation. "I can't loan you the money," I said. "Of course you can," Mark shouted. "You live like a monk. We're family. You can't ruin her future over a clerical error." It wasn't a clerical error. I went to my desk, picked up a single printed page, and handed it to him. "Read the signature line." He did, his face drained. "Donor signature, Claire Vance." "You?" Brooke whispered. "I funded it for 3 years," I said. $180,000, anonymous. "Why didn't you tell us?" "Because if you knew it came from me, you wouldn't respect it. You'd treat it like everything else I give you. Disposable. Owed." Brooke collapsed on the arm of the sofa. "But you canceled it because of the bracelet?" "Not just the bracelet. Because of the entitlement. Because you watched your daughter destroy something precious to me for attention and never told her to apologize." Ava looked up. "It was just an old bracelet. Get over it." "It wasn't just a bracelet," I said quietly. "It was a gift from Walter Hensley." The name sucked the air from the room. "He gave it to my grandmother in 1947. When you snapped that chain, you broke a direct link to the founder of the school you're begging to attend." Mark looked sick. Brooke covered her mouth. Ava's defiance cracked into shock. "You knew?" "I'm a historian. It's my job to know and to protect legacy from people who don't understand its value." The power shift was absolute. Brooke cried, real tears this time, grabbing my hand. "Please, she's just a child. Silly mistakes shouldn't ruin lives." "Breaking property is silly. Destroying a historical artifact for attention is character rot." Mark pleaded. "She'll never get into Juilliard now. Her life will be over." "No," I said. "It will be earned." I opened the door. "I'm not destroying her future. I'm saving it. If I bail her out now, she'll grow into someone talented and hollow. Talent without character is worthless. I'm planting a hard seed. Maybe one day she'll remember the sound of platinum snapping and choose respect. That's the only scholarship I have left to give." They left quietly. 3 weeks later, I picked up the bracelet. The repair was flawless, but the scar remained, a thin silver vein through the metal. I fastened it around my wrist. It felt heavier, realer. Ava was withdrawn from the conservatory. They couldn't pay. She transferred to public school. I heard she sold her expensive bow to fix her cracked phone screen. It's a start. I sat in my living room as the sun set over stacked archival boxes. My phone was silent. My bank account was full. The invisible chain was gone. I wasn't the aunt who paid for everything anymore. I was just Claire. And for the first time in my life, the silence wasn't waiting. It was peace. Most people scroll past stories like this. The ones who subscribe are the ones trying to change something inside themselves. If this made you stop scrolling, subscribe, comment where you're listening from, and share this with someone you love who might need permission to choose their own peace.